Hello everyone, Frank here, and I'm glad that you're here. On my desk today, I have a CZUR Book Scanner. This is the 24 Pro Book Scanner, and if you've seen other videos on my channel, you'll know that I use CZUR Book Scanners for all sorts of aspects to my digital workflow. I use them to scan physical books. I use them to turn physical books into searchable PDFs. I use them a lot. But I keep getting a question that I want to address in today's video. People keep asking, how are they with things like comic books, digitizing comic books, or for comic book collectors? How are they with stamps or for stamp collectors? I even have people asking, how are they if I'm a coin collector? Well, in this video, we're going to look at comic books, stamps, and coins, and how we can use the CZUR Book Scanner as a way of keeping track of our collectibles. I'll show you what the scans look like, some of the settings that I use on the book scanners, as well as some of the things that the book scanner isn't really well suited towards. It is a fantastic tool. I use it all the time for my comic books, my stamps, and my coins. Let's go take a look. Let's begin by looking at comic books first, then we'll look at stamps, and then we'll look at coins. I'm going to scan and show you some of the settings that I use for each of these different type of collectibles, and then I'm going to show you what the results are and compare it to scans that I've taken using a typical flatbed scanner. Very high resolution, pretty expensive flatbed scanner. So first of all, I have my comic book and I put this onto the mat for the scanner to scan. Now the scanner does have a light with 2 levels of illumination. I'm going to turn it on right now to show you why I actually turn that off when I'm scanning comics. And on the software here, I'm going to go to the scan menu. So when I go to do a scan, you'll notice that whatever my last settings were show up here. Typically, the first time that I do scanning, I'll get the flat page scan. And you'll notice with the flat page scan that it goes right around the edges of the comic and it makes it very nice and tight. This is perfect for books. This is perfect for documents, but it's not so good for comic books because a big part of comic book collecting is you want to grade the comic, and a lot of time that has to do with the corners, the shape of the staples, the overall quality of the paper. So what I'm going to do instead when I scan it is I'm going to go to a manual selection, and I'm actually going to drag a box around the comic so that the edges will be part of the scan. And once you do this, it'll remember the setting, and then any subsequent comics that I'm doing, I can quickly scan. The other thing you're going to notice is that many collectibles will have gloss on them. So you can see here that I've got some gloss coming off of the comic book here, and this is why I turn off the light. I'm going to get a little bit of a cleaner scan, a true scan of this particular object, in this case the comic book. So I'm going to press the button that I have to do the scan, and I've now taken a scan of that comic. Now one of the things that I can also do is if I go into settings here, you'll notice that I'm using the 24 megapixel camera. I have my DPI right now set at 700. The default is going to be down at 320. One of the things we always have to ask ourselves when we're doing any type of digital capture is how good is good enough. So for example, I used to work at a museum and we used to take film of different objects that we had. Some of these were huge, priceless artifacts that there was one of them in the world and they were culturally significant. So we would take an image on film. But at some point, it's the object itself that's going to be studied and not the image of the object. But when I'm dealing with something like a comic, what am I trying to normally do? I'm trying to grade it, so I need enough quality to do a legitimate grading of the comic, and I want to put it into an inventory of my comic collection. So I don't want to have massive files. I want to have enough clarity and enough quality in order to do those things. Grade it, see it, understand it, and enjoy it. So I'm going to actually put this at 700 DPI, even though I would probably be happy at 350. And the only reason I'm doing 700 is because it'll make a bigger file, it'll be big enough, but it'll give me a basis of comparison for some of the other scans that I'm doing elsewhere. So I'm going to do the image format. I'm going to do it as a JPEG with best quality. That is one of the settings you want. And then that would all be reflected in the scan. Those were the settings I had last time. Those were the settings in my document. And if I go back here, you'll see that that appears as the document that I scanned. And if I zoom in, you'll see that I'm getting quite a good quality scan here. And what's very important in the case of the comic books is you're seeing that I'm able to see the corners very well. And if I scroll over, you'll be able to see that I can see what's happening here at the staple very well. As you can see, as I zoom in, I can see that. This is going to be perfect for my purposes. Let's go back and see something really cool that we can do with the CZUR scanner when it comes to comics. And that is, what if I want to scan something from the inside of the comic? Maybe there are some pages that I want to read digitally. Maybe there are some pages that I want to use to do a review, whatever the case may be. So in this situation, I'm going to do the facing page, and you'll notice that it gives me the book flattening technology. So it's going to put a guide right down the middle. I don't want to press this down. I don't want to risk damaging the spine of this moderately valuable comic book here. So now I'm going to use this. Once again, I'm going to press my button and take my scan. And now it's going to process those pages as page 1, page 2. So it's going to actually process them as 2 separate flattened pages. This is great if I want to do some digital reading. This is great if I want to keep a digital copy of specific panels or specific areas of this comic book. So now what I'm going to do here is I can go back. So we'll go back. You'll see that those 2 pages are now part of what I've scanned. And if you zoom in, you can see that it's done quite a nice job of flattening the pages. So you can see the flattening pages there. And I now could go in and I could read this comic digitally if I wanted to. So I could transfer this out to a PDF. I have other videos where I talk about how this could be saved as a PDF. So again, with comic books, I have a lot of different ways that I can set things up. I can have all my comic books scanned, and that's a great thing. Let's go take a look at stamps. Now, for a lot of stamp collectors, you'll have a stamp album. And what you'll do is you'll put your stamps into mounts on the album, and that's a great way to keep your stamps in one place. But what if you want to go in and take some blank pages? Maybe you collect something special and you want to create your own unique pages in your stamp album. You want to put images of the stamps here, and then you want to cut mounts and put it in together for something like a stamp show. Or maybe you just have stamps that don't really fit into any of your albums. They're not part of a different category or something in your albums. So you want to take those stamps and you want to put those into a scanned image so that you can go through them. Well, I do this all the time because I do collect a couple of unusual areas of stamps. I like to collect postal cancellations from remote places in the world, and I like to collect stamps that do things that have to do with science and technology and Antarctica and exploration. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take some stamps and we're going to look at some of the settings that I would use. I'm going to take a first day cover. So we'll take a first day cover and we'll scan that. I'll take some stamps, so I'll take a block of stamps here. So that's a block of stamps. And I'll even take a more modern stamp. This is one of the things that we have when it comes to stamps, is that you have stamps that are engraved, you have stamps that are printed, and you have stamps that are lithographs. So different types of printing for the stamp production itself, that's going to affect what we get when we actually do our scanning. So I'm going to go into the scanner here, and you'll see that I have my different types of stamps. I have my first day cover, I have my block of stamps, and I have my lithograph conservation stamp. Here I'm going to make this a flat sheet, and notice it automatically finds the edges as well. Because I want to be able to do some cropping, and because I want to be able to work with these stamps as individual objects, even though I'm going to scan them all at once, I will go in, I will improve the area or expand the area here. I can then cut those out. I could also, of course, scan each of these individually. I'm going to go into my settings here. Underneath settings, once again, I can set my DPI to a higher level DPI, image format to best quality, and now I'll press the button and I will have scanned the stamps here. This will process at 700 DPI, and we're going to go and take a look at these. So now what I can do is see that that's been scanned as a single page. So you can see that's been scanned as a single page. And as I zoom in, you're going to see that things like this first day cover from Antarctica, I can come in, I can read, it's 1955 from Australia. You can see, I can see the cancellation in here. This is perfect for stamp collecting. If I go into the block of stamps, you'll see I can get a really good look for those stamps. But if I zoom in a lot, you're going to see that it starts to break down a little bit, but that is not as much the scan. A lot of that has to do with the printing technology of the stamp itself. Because if I go into this other stamp here, which is more of a lithograph type stamp, you can see that it does break down a bit, but it doesn't break down as much. When it comes to things like stamp collecting, a lot of what we're looking at will be things like the paper. We're looking for lithograph imperfections. A good example would be, here's an engraving. So sometimes we're looking for things like an engraving error. If I zoom in on this stamp here, I'm going to really zoom in. I'm not going to be able to see any of the engraving errors that may occur on this stamp. So this is an area where I can use this for building up album pages. I can use this for keeping an inventory of my stamp, but I would not necessarily be using this type of scanner, a book scanner. Even at 999 DPI, I will get this breakdown as I zoom in, and I won't be able to look for things like breaks in the border, which are very important in stamp collecting. So is it good for stamp collecting? It is. Is it perfect for stamp collecting? Actually not. I would recommend that you would first of all get the stamp and use a magnifying glass, or you're going to need to get a specialty scanner that's going to be able to do very high DPI so that I can do things like see engraving errors. This is something that I'll show you in a few moments because I've scanned a lot of these objects using a quite expensive flatbed scanner that, first of all, is very expensive compared to the CZUR scanners, and it's extremely specialized. It's for very specialized work. In my case, stamp collecting, I do like to scan things and look for engraving errors. So that would be an example of where there's a limitation, and when we hit that limitation, it's important to look at other alternatives as well. Finally, let's go take a look at coins and how the scanner works with coins. So with coins, I have a couple of different types of coins. I have some coins that are just on their own, and I have some coins that are actually in some commemorative type of containers. So we have, these are sealed coins, they're in a plastic container, and there's a lot of gloss on this container. So if I put the coins underneath the scanner, let's do that and go into the scanning mode. So we'll move that to the side. So here you can see that I've got the United States quarters. I've got, these are called geo coins. So I've got some little geo coins in there, and I want to scan these. Once again, my past settings are there, so I'm in the manual mode, and I can go in and just bring this down a little bit. And we're also going to go into our settings. You'll see that they're exactly the same, 24 megapixel camera. I've set my DPI to 700, best quality JPEG format, and let's go ahead and press the button for the scan. So I've done my scan. Let's go and take a look at the results once they're processed. Go back here. You'll see that I'm able to go in and see my coin sheet here, and you'll see already I have some things here. I've got a lot of glow on here. And you can see that as I scan in, I'm going to get an idea of what the coin looks like, and it's going to be okay. But this is not going to be very effective if it comes to actual coin collecting. This would be great for me to do, for example, an insurance inventory, or to have some of my coins cataloged. But I would not use this if this was something where I want to look for things like strike marks, or if I want to look for, some types of things where you can see it kind of, even at the higher resolution, if we scan in too much, I'm starting to miss some of the details. And when it comes to things like stamp collecting, and especially coin collecting, the details really matter. So this is an area that I actually do not recommend the CZUR scanner as a coin collecting tool. It's great if I want to show things in a classroom. It's great if I just want to take some images of the coins. But if I want to get right down to the edges of the coin, if I want to get right to the most detailed aspects of the coin, I'm just not going to get that because of reflection and because of the way that the scans work. So let me go and show you some scans that I did on a flatbed scanner that goes up to 4800 DPI. Now, for the purposes of this video, I only scanned at about 1200 DPI on that scanner, but you'll see the difference. It's quite interesting to observe the differences between the three. First, I have the comic book here, so it's the same comic book. And the big difference here is when I zoom in, you'll see that I'm still able to get really good scan. This is very similar to what I got with the CZUR scanner. Some things here, as you can see, some of the abrasions show up. And if I go to the staple here, let me find the staple here, going down to the bottom of the book here. So we have to scroll in order to find the staple. And scroll up here. There we go. So you can see here that on this scan here, I get a little bit more of the paper showing. So if I'm dealing with a comic book, let's say I'm dealing with something that's worth tens of thousands of dollars, I'm probably going to either want photographs of that comic book, or I'm going super high resolution photographs, or I'm going to want to scan at 4800 DPI. Let's take a look at another scan in here. I'm going to go into the stamps. So here I have the stamps, and as I was saying in the video, with this scan here, as I scroll in, you'll notice here I have enough scan so that I can see things like the lines of the engraving. This becomes very important when I'm doing any type of stamp collecting with engraved stamps, where I need to go in and I need to look for engraving errors. If I go into another scan here, this is the scan for the photograph of the lithograph stamp. You'll notice I can see the actual printing here. I can see the dots of the printing process in here. So if we scan in, you can see I'm still seeing the dots of the printing process, but I am very, very much zoomed in on that. And if I go to the coins, this is where it makes a huge difference here. So you can see I can see the actual engraving in here. I can see it very, very detailed in the various coins here. If I'm looking at something like let's grab this Alaska coin here, you can see I can go right into the engraving on the trees here. You can see I can get the edges of the coin. So my thought here is that if I'm going to be doing anything with coins, I'm probably going to use photography or a very expensive flatbed scanner. If I'm doing anything with stamps, either modern stamps or older stamps, I'm probably going to be happy creating album pages and creating a catalog using the scanner that I have. You can see as I scroll in, you see the printing dots in here as well. So this isn't real, this is, so if I need to go to the level of looking at engraving in order to look for engraving errors and such, then I'm probably going to have to go to photography or a fairly expensive flatbed scanner. But comic books are fantastic. Comic books will give me most everything that I need. I'm going to be able to do a general grading of the comic book here. It's definitely something that I get the additional advantage of flattening the comic book to make digital copies without having to actually flatten the pages. So in my case, I really like the CZUR scanner for comic books. I like it for stamps, and I don't think I would use it for coins. I hope that was useful for you. Let me know in the comments down below what you collect and what are the most important aspects of your collection that you either need to take a photo of or scan for your purposes. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.